live on Twitch.
And hello, everybody. CoCoTECH episode 006A, Semigraphics 1224 Addendum.
Correct.
Okay, we've got a demo up.
So for those of you who caught episode 6, which is a few months ago, I think already at this point, we gave you some tips and tricks there for using Semigraphics 12 and Semigraphics 24 to a limited extent from Extended Basic, using a couple of pokes to disable the print hook in regular Basic so that it doesn't keep hijacking you. And you can fool it with PMODE 1 to be an SG12 screen or PMODE 4 to be an SG24 screen. And things like get and put lines with certain limitations and caveats, you have to kind of do some special things. Well, since we did all that, we've discovered some things. Some viewers actually pointed out some things. So we're going to cover a couple of things here. This will be a fairly small episode. That's why it's called an addendum rather than a full-blown episode. And the first one, Nick, have you got your little PCLS program ready to go?
Well, yeah, might as well.
I wanted to point out on the previous episode 6, I said to clear the screen. The way you could do it, you do the poke 178 to pick your color that you want, or even a pattern of a certain character or something. And you do a line with a box fill, which is a bit slow. And then I would use P-copy if you're doing a bigger screen to copy a chunk multiple times. It got pointed out to me by Retrorick, I think in the Discord, CoCo Discord, that actually there is a background color poke as well. And if you do a PCLS without a number, it'll actually use that default background color. And that is to poke 179 instead of 178. So 178 is your foreground color. That's stuff like line and line box fill and that kind of stuff uses. And the poke 179 will do the background color, which is what PCLS uses. You can actually PCLS a screen with any of the patterns of Semigraphics or even the text characters, for that matter. If you want to fill a screen with ats or something, you do that too. So Nick has quickly typed in a program, just winged it here, and hopefully it'll run. To kind of give you a little demo here.
Well,
and are you using SG12 or 24 in your particular instance here, Nick?
Let's see, 24 at the moment.
Okay.
So I'm showing a screen. This is the listing. You might want to explain what the program is doing before I run it. The first poke there on line 100, it stops Basic from resetting the mode back to the normal. You explain it, Curtis.
Yeah, there's a print hook in Basic that basically, if you're doing a screen 1,1, it resets it every 60th of a second to whatever mode. Like if you do a screen 0, it switches back to text mode. Screen 1 is a graphics mode. Well, Semigraphics isn't supported by either of those options, so Basic would just reset it to, plain text. This poke disables that print hook, so basically if you tell the SAM and the VDG, nah, I want Semigraphics, higher Semigraphics, then it'll leave it alone. And that's what that one poke 35957. For the technically minded, what that is doing is taking the print hook and replacing it with an RTS, which means it's immediately to come back to you and skip all the ROM stuff.
And then, of course, we re-enable it at the very end of that listing that you see.
Yeah, and that just re-enables the jump instruction again. So
that Basic is back to normal. So what we're doing here then is once we disable Basic on line 100, 120 then goes into a normal PMODE 4 screen, and then screen 10 will then display that screen, which is normally just a high-res graphic black and white screen. But then what we need to do is we need to do the pokes directly to the VDG, and I've got 2 pokes there on line 130. The first poke is for the CoCo 3, just to get the CoCo 3 into a Semigraphics 24 mode. And the second poke is for the VDG to get into that Semigraphics mode.
Now, there's one difference between the Gimme CoCo 3 version and the CoCo 1 and 2 SAM VDG version, and that is the text characters can actually appear on the CoCo 1 and 2. That's not supported on the Gimme. So text characters won't print anything. You can just use the Semigraphics character string 128 through 255.
Now, having said that, because I'm using VCC, VCC does let you do it. So that's, I guess you could say that's an inaccuracy of VCC as far as the emulation of a CoCo 3 is concerned.
Yes.
But I suspect they put that in solely to get around that limitation.
Yeah, the
On
only
a
way you can
real,
get around that on the CoCo 3 right now is if you have a gimme X and hopefully the gimme Z
yeah,
when
yeah.
Alan's done with it.
So yeah, that first poke there on line 130 makes the CoCo 3 go into an SG24 mode, but only the characters 128 and up, none of the text. The
Yeah.
second poke, FF22, is for the CoCo 1 and 2, and that, of course, does show everything. And what I've done then, and then look at the next line after that poke line 140, we do a poke 179, A. Now you might want to explain what that poke's for,
Yeah, so
Curtis.
the 179 is the background color, the default background color that BASIC uses for any graphic stuff. And that's the one that was new that Retrorick pointed out, because I didn't realize that PCLS used the background color. I was assuming the foreground color and just thought it didn't work. So what you're doing here is you're poking the value that it's going to PCLS the screen with. Now you can use the arrays we put in the original demo. If you have that disk image, we have the subroutines packages where I've got the CF and CL and CR, which is your color left, right, and color full. And you can do all the original colors right from green right through to orange. Your standard, low res graphics, 8 colors. And you can also poke in, text, characters, and whatever you want, and it'll clear the screen in Semigraphics 12 or 24 in this case with that character. So you can actually fill it with @ signs or A's or orange blocks or a checkerboard of red or whatever.
And so then what I've done is then I've wrapped those lines in a loop so that we can display all those values from 0 to 255 and poking at 179 and then doing a PCLS. So this PCLS will therefore from BASIC clear that entire PMODE 4 screen, which is a 6K screen. And you can do Semigraphics 12, which is a 3K screen, and I think PMODE 0 is it, which is a 1K screen. I can't.
1.5, yeah.
1.5, yeah.
Yeah.
So
to be honest, if you guys are using regular graphics modes, this Poke 179 will also work there, and you get patterns, vertical patterns that you can paint the screen with on PCLS. It doesn't have to be on the Semigraphics.
Right. Okay. So when I run it, the first thing you'll see is, of course, value 0 being used as a PCLS.
Yeah.
Now,
I want to point one thing before we go any further, Nick.
Yep.
Because this is being interpreted by BASIC as a graphics mode, the value you're poking in here doesn't correspond to the actual poke value that would be on the screen. It's trying to do bit masking and stuff here as if it's a color. So this won't be matching like what you're used to if you're using Semigraphics 4, for example. Like if you want to, paint the screen orange, you would use 255, for example. It'll be different because it's being interpreted. You can run through this to do it, or you can use the arrays we put in those demos, the CF and CL and CR I was mentioning, if you want some colors that you actually know ahead of time what they're going to be. But you can also do other stuff in here that doesn't support. So if you go through this and you find a particular pattern you want to clear the background with, you can just run this little program here and figure which value you need.
I did want to do a chart, and I didn't get time before this episode, whereby it shows you the number and the pattern. And it would have been nice just to have a chart. You just pick the color and the pattern you wanted, and that would be the poke, but I didn't get time.
Yeah.
But
Nick, do you want to do an RGB command first? Because I notice you're still running in composite color mode there.
Okay.
That won't be accurate for the CoCo 3.
That's only
Nick, I think you should leave as an exercise for the viewer. They can figure out.
That's right. It's a test. Okay, so if I run the program, it'll just cycle through all the values 0, 255. I just press enter to move on to the next value. And you can see how the PCLS is clearing the entire, in this case, 6K SG24 screen. So the first value is 0, and that's a text character, and it's showing that all through the screen. The next value, U, but then you get into the graphics. So this is where Curtis was saying it doesn't really line up with what you're used to with the normal bitmap mapping that BASIC would do. That's why a chart or Curtis's array, which has all the values, worked out for you lets you go through. So you can clear an entire SG24 or 12 screen with PCLS to any of these patterns. I can cycle through solid orange. Now, these text ones, you just probably not use that unless you're looking for a specific effect like that. But the text ones are pretty useless. But then you have to cycle through and you find one that's got blue checkered patterns, orange, and I'll just go through quickly and you can just get an idea. So it's all the blue and orange for the first 32 values. And then it moves on to the next color and it repeats all those, but with the next color, which I'm coming up to right now. There was a black there as well, orange and yellow. There's a yellow, and we're going to start seeing yellows. So, and that's just clearing the entire SG24 screen. So if you need to clear an entire screen with a pattern for some reason, you do that poke, and PCLS will use those characters.
Yeah, and it's multiple times faster than the line BF option that I used before in the previous episode.
Because BASIC doesn't really support SG24, we're fooling it to use what it does know, which is the PCLS, but we're fooling it so it doesn't really use it the way it knows. Hence why that weird poke and the other poke to disable BASIC from trying to fix itself.
Yeah,
and,
I will mention too, if you guys have seen CoCoTown's channel on YouTube, he actually did a Semigraphics using some of these techniques, and he did figure out the mathematical formula for figuring out where the characters would be. If you want to predict, I want a vertical yellow stripe versus a horizontal bottom half blue stripe or something like that. If you watch his video on the Semigraphics 24, he actually explains how that's done. He actually has some sample source code you can download for that math as well.
And if most people are dumb like me, in that they hate the math, that's why I said it'd be good to have a chart that actually graphically shows you the color, the pattern, and the value. But I didn't get time to do that. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I run this program, I find the color and pattern I want, and when I find it, I have to hit break, which I'm not sure, or reset rather in this case, and then print. I think the variable I'll put that I was using is A. Oh, okay, something's weird. Okay, normally you would then print the value that the loop was up to, and then you knew that value, if you poke that value into that address, that would show you that pattern.
Is your program still there if you type list?
Well, let's see if it is.
Wouldn't it be print A?
What did I type?
Question mark A.
You took S1A.
Question mark's a shortcut for
it's a shortcut for A. But see, it's something weird happening.
Yeah, it should. At the very least, it should say 0.
Yeah, not syntax error.
I've got weird stuff happening. So right now we're winging it.
Yeah, your host PC, we should mention for those who are wondering, your host PC is actually having some problems. Your Windows machine that's running the emulator is having issues on its own. So probably related.
You could try the word print just to see if it makes a difference. But yeah, you shouldn't get a syntax error on that.
Well, really, what if I do run again and just pick up, say, that one, hit escape in VCC. Now, that's it. That should have done a break. But because we're disabled,
it did behind the scenes because now you got that print hook disabled, so it can't
it can't reset it. So
you can type the poke manually blindly at this point to actually reset it, so you can actually see the screen like it should be.
Yeah, so
which is poke 359,126.
If it's actually working, what poke
359,126.
59, what
126.
Yeah, it was that last line. But everything's in a bit of a rush at the moment. Now it's not resetting, so there's something weird. Anyway, we'll worry about that. That's for another day. I'll just reset.
I can show that on mine when I show my demo.
Yeah, but anyway, that was what I originally had going, and before I had this problem just before the show. We're not stressed. We're not stressed. Anyway, so that's what I was trying to explain there, how you can use the PCLS command to use it as a clear screen command for the semi-graphics mode. And you can choose whatever color and pattern available to clear
Or
the
even
screen.
text character.
Or, well,
No.
or text characters, yeah. If you've got a need for it there, yeah.
No,
Like
That's
an inner
interesting.
space, for example, would show up as a dark green, which you normally can't get. So that'd be one example.
Yeah, yeah.
If you have a CoCo 1
So-
or 2 anyway.
If you have a CoCo 1 and 2, you're not on a 3. So that was the first part of your list of topics, Curtis. What's next? Do you want me to unshare or?
I'm trying to remember which one do you actually have that is still
Well, the only
happening
other
for
one
the-
I have that didn't get corrupted was the one about the one about the copying. You were saying one technique I used in my game Hero was when you used a bomb on the screen. So the idea is that when your character was running around the screen, you could get a bomb and drop a bomb. And I wanted the effect whereby all the corridors in the room get to flash, so to show the flash from the bomb. Now, on the CoCo 3, that's easy. You just change the palette value for that color, and you can make that color all over the screen just flash.
And very quickly.
Very quickly, instantly. But on a CoCo 1 and 2, you don't have palette commands. So you needed a way of being able to, well, I wanted a way where I could do that full screen flash in BASIC. So I've come up with another way, which using all our techniques with the semi-graphics. And it also has the benefit in that it won't change. I'll run the demo program. I know this one wasn't corrupted, so I'm in luck there. So I think I called it demo 3. 2 is long gone now. So what I've done, no, demo 3, you did. Didn't even get time to learn how to count before the show. Okay, demo and
It's always
3.
next week.
I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed. Okay, so what I've done here is I've pre-drawn things so that you can see it easier. Now this is an SG24 screen, so it's 6K in size, and I've loaded this image off disk. I pre-drawn it, and it's screens from my game Hero, and you can see the top half and the bottom half of the screen I've divided. The game itself uses SG12, which is only a 3K screen. So it's only half this screen. Hence why I've got the top half shows it's a view of the game screen of Hero. So in the basic program, that's where you draw all your graphics and whatever's going to be shown on the game. But as a trick, and we'll talk more about this a bit later on, but you can actually draw even below ahead of that screen and draw a second screen on that PMODE, on that SG24 screen in the other 3K. And as you see in the bottom half, I've redrawn the screen, but this time I've drawn yellow instead of the black for the background, but just in the areas that I want to flash. So just going through quickly, I'll press enter. That's the screen that you would see. You would see the top part of what you just saw before, but now I'm in
But now we're in SG12 mode.
SG12, which takes up half the size, and the pixels are a little bit chunkier, and you don't see that second screen. It's there, but it's right after it in the second part of the half of that 6K screen area. So I will be playing the game on this screen. This is what the player would see. Then you would get a bomb and you would drop a bomb. So the effect I needed to do then, and remember this is in BASIC, so you don't really have machine code subroutines to go and create this.
And redraw. Yeah, if you redrew it all in yellow, it would take a second or two fully.
If you use BASIC,
yeah.
And especially since BASIC doesn't really support SG24, therefore the only command you would normally use is a poke. So you can imagine how fast that would be if you have to go through and poke all that black area one byte at a time to make it yellow or whatever whatever you choose. It would just not work. It's not a flash. It just stops the game while it does that. But this way, you can just, and I'll press enter, and it does the flash. So all I'm doing there is just quickly displaying the current screen and then jumping to the second screen and back again. So the thing is, it's all pre-drawn already on that second half, and I can just use I'll bring up the listing, and I might go to a width 40 just so we can see the entire program. With 40 and list it. Right. So again, only a very small program, and I'll just quickly explain what it's doing. The first line 100 does that poke we mentioned before, which stops BASIC from trying to reset itself back to what it knows. So that disables BASIC. And again, at the very end, I restore it on that line 220. In between, you can see 3 blocks of code. I tried to separate them so you can see each section. So between lines 120 and 140, what I do is I set the PMODE 4 mode and do the screen command to display it. And that opens up a standard 2-color VDG screen. But then immediately after, I do the pokes to force SG24. And because BASIC doesn't know that I've done this change because of that first poke on line 100, it holds it at SG24, even though BASIC thinks it's using what's known as a PMODE 4 screen. So once you've got it in that mode, that's a 6K screen. I then do a load M of those. I said before I pre-did those images, so it wouldn't take too much time right now. So I load in the graphics into that PMODE 4 6K area. So it loads into memory, and that's what you saw, the 2 screens. I do an input A just to pause the program. And then when I press enter, it then jumps to the next area, which pretty well does the same as what it just did, but this time PMODE 1,1. I now tell BASIC that you've got a PMODE 1 screen, which is half of the normal PMODE 4 screen. Instead of 6K, it's using 3K, which is half of what you saw, the top half of the screen that I showed you before. Now, what part of that 6K you're viewing is determined by the screen command.
Actually, the PMODE.
PMODE, sorry, yeah, the second value there.
So PMODE has 2 parameters. The first one is which mode you want, and that determines how much memory the screen's going to take. And the second one is which page number you want to start at. Now, the way Extended Basic sets it up is that each page is 1.5K. So if you do a (1), it starts at the very beginning of the screen. If you do a (2), it'll start 1.5K in. If you do a (3), it starts 3K in. (3) will be 4.5K in, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, the 1,1 here is basically telling it that it's going to still start on the very top of the screen that he just loaded in with that load M game GFX, But with PMODE 1, that means it's only going to use 3K when you do the screen 1,0, and then he does the pokes for SG12. So now we're viewing the top half of the original SG24 screen as a SG12 single screen.
SG12, because SG12 uses that 3K, so you see the entire screen the way it was meant to. And then the third area is where I create the explosion effect. So once you press on line 180, I've got to input A again just to pause it there, press enter, and it goes into, now I've made a multi-statement line here because the faster I can do this, the cleaner the flashing is, because again, this is being run in BASIC, so we don't want really much delay between the commands, because a delay, you'd see little glitches in the effect. So I start up a little loop that counts from 1 to 20. So it's going to execute all those instructions inside within that loop 20 times. I then use, rather than try to use the PMODE command to choose the other display page, which would work, but it's slow. You would see a glitch on the screen whenever it did that, because if I did a PMODE, use the PMODE command, it would switch the screen, but it would also put the VDG back into VDG in normal graphics mode. So I would have to do the pokes right after that to take it back again to the SG12 mode. And BASIC, by the time BASIC executes those two instructions, you see a glitch. You see part of the VDG display when PMODE changed it back just for that little split second. So you don't get a nice clean switch to the second screen. But by poking directly to the VDG and forcing it to point to another screen, and that requires two pokes at FFC8 and FFCD. That forces it to go and point to that second area of RAM. And it does it, well, faster than trying to use the PMODE, the screen, and all those pokes to put it back into SG24. Because this method, I don't get out of the SG24 mode. It keeps the CoCo keeps running in SG24, and all I'm doing is directly changing where that start of display is going to be. So that's a lot quicker, and I can do the switch over, and then I do a delay, and I'll explain this. This is probably outside of what we're normally talking about, but with the SG graphics, but we'll explain it because a few people may not know this. I use the play command as a delay. Normally you would say, oh, we need a bit of a delay here, so let's just make another loop, you know, do another 4A to 1 to 10, or whatever value you want to delay for. And so it's a little for next loop. Well, if you use the play command with the P command, which is a pause, and then you can put a value there, you could say, oh, well, as I've done here, play pause 20, and it tries to, well, there's no notes in there, so you don't hear any sounds, but it's creating a very short delay. So a delay so that you can see the second screen for a very short time, and then I do the pokes again to take the screen back to the first position, and again another delay so you can see the screen has switched back, and then the loop just goes over 20 times, and it does a nice clean switch between the two screens, and you get that flashing effect, which I'm using for the bomb explosion. Now I'll run it one more time, but before I do, I have to switch it back to width 32. Did I do RGB? I did, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I know it works either way. So just looking back at it all, I load up the 6K PMODE 4 screen with the pre-drawn graphics. So the top half is the actual final display. And the second one is a copy of it. If I was writing a basic program that had to generate these, you would generate the first screen and you could just use pcopy, because you could just pcopy the 3K area on the top into the bottom area from basic. So that would be fairly quick as well. But then you would need to, fix up and paint the black areas to whatever other color you wanted, yellow in this case. And for that, you can also use some of these SG graphics techniques of get and put to make that faster as well. That's what I did in Hero. Basically, you're trying to create these two screens. So the game will play on the first one, but the bomb effect will be called up by flashing to the second one and then back. So the game would show you the top half only, and for a bomb, it would do.
Yeah, you're basically switching between the two screens really fast.
And that's basically what you're doing. So it looks very machine code like. I mean, normally in basic you wouldn't have the speed to be able to do that sort of thing. And
this can be called, like, I think back in the old days of the CoCo, this was called page flipping, and now it's called double buffering.
It's page flipping, but it's page flipping, and we're doing it in SG24 or well SG12 really in this mode. And we're doing it all from basic, no machine code. So that was one technique that Curtis was saying I should explain what I did in Hero to get that effect.
Yeah. Now, Nick, I'm going to reuse your demo here to kind of talk about the secondary thing that's kind of related to this. Now, obviously, your program that did actually quote unquote demo, it's gone, but I think I can explain it using this demo. So if you want to run it again, just leave it on the first screen.
All right. That one.
Okay, so we're in SG24. Now, SG24 has a vertical resolution identical to PMODE 4, which is 0 to 191 for 192 lines. Now, if any of you have done any programming with different PMODEs and extended basic, know basic scales everything. Everything is 256 by 192, even if it's really not. Now, they did this because they figured people might want to switch between a PMODE 3 to a PMODE 1 or a PMODE 2 to a PMODE 0 or a PMODE 4. I personally find it annoying as hell because I can never remember where exactly things really are going. So basically what happens here is that, and this, by the way, this technique will work whether you're in the regular PMODEs or if you're in Semigraphics. But basically in this case here, if you set it up for PMODE 4 or Semigraphics 24, you've got 192 vertical lines. And if you want to draw, say, a line with the line command, you would give it literally the Y coordinate you want. I want to print on the 96th line, which is roughly halfway down the screen. You tell it to do a line at whatever, say 0, 96 to 255, 96, for example. Now, if you switch to a PMODE 1, so Nick, if you want to hit enter, this is now a 96 line high screen. But in basic, you still have to use 0 to 191. And that's part of that built-in scaling that extended basic does, which makes calculating where stuff should go a bit more difficult than it really has to be. And one trick that Nick found, now, if you only need a single screen, this will take more memory, twice as much memory as it actually needs. So maybe you know, depending how big your program is, you may want to do this or may not. But if you want to make your calculations easier, you can tell Extended Basic, do a PMODE 4, reserve a 192 line height screen, and then immediately switch to PMODE 1, which wants a 96 line screen. But then if you don't use the screen command with PMODE 4 and you just leave the screen command for the PMODE 1, that means now, because right after you do the PMODE 0, or sorry, 1, screen 1, 0 to show the screen like Nick's showing here right now, if you immediately follow that with a PMODE 4, which tells Basic, no, we're doing a 192 screen again, but you don't use the screen command or the pokes to do the equivalent of it, Then Basic thinks it's working on a 6K screen. And now, since we're only showing the top half of what would have been a SG24 PMODE 4, that means coordinates 0 through 96, real 0 through 96, will cover this exact screen, 1-to-1. You don't have to figure out the scaling calculation. Line 0 is line 0. Line 10 is line 10. And it also gives you the bonus that you can actually tell it to draw stuff on the second screen while this one's being displayed. And they will be invisible to the user until you're ready to show it to them. So you could actually use lines 96 through 191, which will draw the other half on the bottom, the one where Nick had demoed with the yellow background. But you can draw whatever the heck you want there. And then if you want to, you do a screen command after that to, after doing a PMODE 1, 3, for example, and then you do a screen 1, 0, and then it'll flip and show you that second half. So this way you can draw stuff offline, but with real coordinates, or if you just want to make it easier on yourself to program it, you can do the PMODE 4 to reserve 6K for 1-to-1 ratio and do a PMODE 1, 1, screen 1, 0 to only show this as a 96 line high SG12 screen, but your coordinates will be literally 1-to-1 and what they're supposed to be. You don't have to figure out, I want to really print halfway down the screen or, 10 lines down. Well, I'm going to double it because I'm in PMODE 1. Basic's going to scale it, so I actually have to put a 20 in. And it's a pain in the butt when you're trying to figure out like get, put buffers and lines and all kinds of stuff where they're supposed to go. So this is kind of a trick to save you a lot of headache. And also gives you the added advantage, of course, that you can draw stuff completely related. Like, let's say you have a game screen here. Maybe you're drawing a map on the bottom where the player's been. Completely unrelated screen. Like a hero where it's basically doing two of the same scene, just with a different background color. But you can actually have the auto map updating there. And then if the player hits a certain key, you just immediately do a PMODE 1, 3, screen 1, 0. Boop, there's your current map. And then you want it ready to return back to the main game, hit a key, and it goes PMODE 1, 1, screen 1, 0, and bang, you're right back to your main screen here. So you can use this for a couple different ways to enhance the game, etc. And remember, Basic actually lets you do up to 8 graphics pages. You can do 2 full SG24 screens, and you can do up to 4 SG12 screens. You can put all kinds of different things, different parts of the game that you can instantly switch to. But the main thing I wanted to point out is you can actually use this to get around the scaling. So if you do a pclear 4, reserve 4 pages, even if my game's only going to be SG12, and then you tell it to do PMODE 4 to reserve the screen first, and then you do a PMODE 1, 3, or sorry, 1, screen 1, 0 to display it as an SG12, but then tell Basic, no, actually I'm in PMODE 4, but don't do the screen command. So you're not telling the VDG to redisplay it as an SG24. It's going to leave it displaying SG12, the top half, and Basic thinks it's a full SG24. So now all your coordinates are literally what they're supposed to be, no scaling at all. So that's what I kind of wanted to talk about there. It just makes the calculations easier. And then, of course, you can use it for the effects of, flashing colors or having auto mapping or whatever else you want to do on the second screen. And if your game is SG12 based, you can actually have it up to 4 screens. So you can actually make a big 2x2 map of something if you want, or different status screens or whatever else. And your original SG4, your standard 32x16 text screen is still there too. And if you do a screen 0, you can actually go back to that. So you can actually switch between all these different screens, which almost kind of gives you a primitive full screen windowing, kind of like OS9 Level 2 does, which is really cool.
That's right. Yeah.
So before I go on to my next one, I have the demo program. Is there any questions from anybody either in the chat room, which will take a little bit of time to catch up, or on the panel about any of this?
Actually, the chat's been quiet.
Yeah,
We've
nothing
lulled
at
them
all.
to sleep already, Nick.
They're asleep or they're just dumbfounded.
Must be that. There's 16 watching on YouTube, but there are no comments. So
Yeah.
All right.
Well, they're on
Speechless.
about a 20 to 30 second delay too. So
And before you go on, we should just ask, can they enter text or send us a question or whatever? Type it in, right?
yeah, they should be able to do it in the
Yeah,
chat.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that we need to just go back and explain to clarify? Like, did we confuse them?
Now, I will mention, like, the first trick that Nick showed about the PCLS, that you can use that in regular PMODEs as well to do a vertical stripe pattern. You can even do it for like stripes of different artifact colors, etc. And this technique here of using it for getting your Y coordinates scaled up or to switch between different halves of the same screen with different effects and stuff like Nick did in Hero. These also work in the P modes as well. So this is not a trick, not just for Semigraphics 24, but it is a way to help you speed up certain graphics types of things like filling in a background yellow of the exact same scene, like Nick does in the Flash.
It's also good for if, for example, in Hero, I had to load all the graphics from disk into memory, and then I had to grab all the graphic elements using get commands to store them into a graphic array, and a bit of manipulating just to prepare all the graphics for the game. And rather than loading it on the screen and people can see it all happening, and the whole thing, they're saying, oh, what's going on? All this stuff is happening and I don't know, doesn't look like it's part of the game. And it's not, it's part of the setup. What you do is you put a title screen or whatever and show that first, and then switch everything across, but don't display it. Still show the title screen or whatever other screen you want to show, while basic is drawing and manipulating or setting up all the graphic arrays on that other screen. So it just looks a bit cleaner. The user just sees a very clean title page, a bit of a delay while it's working in the background, and then it just flashes up the finished product. So it's just a presentation thing as well.
Yeah,
you can do that.
It really heightens the fact that it makes it look like it's faster than it is, because if you were literally watching the screen being drawn, you're watching like blocks getting drawn across. Like when you shut the lights off, that's one place where you do notice it.
Yeah,
because you're actually redrawing those screen. That takes like a second or two, but you actually watch a drawing, so you notice, oh, I'm waiting for this to draw.
If you see it doing if you see it doing all that drawing, you immediately think, oh, this must be in basic. This is slow. I can see it drawing things up. But if you just hide that and show people something else while you're doing that very thing in the background, they think, oh, it's obviously just a normal pause before the game starts. No, it's working its ass off trying to get ready and trying to hide the fact that it's only in basic.
Yeah, it gives you the illusion that it's instantaneous. We just deliberately paused for a second so you could see the screen, the title screen first, or whatever.
It's magic.
Yeah, or BS, I believe is the technical term. But it works.
Yeah. All right, so now you want me to unshare?
Yes, please.
Hang on. Now, that should be happening.
Yeah, you're unshared, so I'm going to share XROAR. This is running in CoCo 1 and 2 modes, composites. I won't have the nice bright colors that VCC does for RGB. Let me share mine. I didn't separate lines and stuff to make it look pretty like Nick did, even though I had more time because I'm lazy. Now, this one is actually based on, if you remember from the disk images we gave out on using the Semigraphics from the episode 6, we created those arrays for doing digits 0 through 9 in Semigraphics nice and easy, and also the different colors for the CF, CL, and CR, which is the colors for a full width byte or full width. So basically it fills it right in. And then we also have the ones for the left and right stripes, CL for left, CR for right. And the color, the array element actually is the color that you want right from regular, CLS command. If we do a CLS2, it clears it yellow. If you want, full width pixels, you do a CF sub 2, you poke that into 178 and it'll use yellow. So you don't have to rememorize new colors. You can just use the ones you already know. Now, what this part here is a trick that actually.
We have a question. Tom Eric Edison wants to know if the various pokes used are the same for the dragon.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly the same.
Excellent. Okay, continue.
Okay. So basically, what I want to get into here is a trick that actually Nick did use in Hero, and it's a quirk of. Sorry.
Just pause there. Maybe the poke for disabling basic, that
one might be different. Yeah, I'm not sure if the print hooks in the exact same spot.
Yeah. So that one will change. The ones that poke to the VDG to set up the
SAM, they're exactly the same.
They should be the same. But yeah, that first poke, The dragon would have one the same, but yeah, it might be in a different
Yeah, their
place.
basics a little bit different. I wish 60 was still here. I think he had to. It's late where he is, so he might be gone already.
Yeah,
We'll get the information from 60 because
Yeah,
there's an
that's
equivalent poke that does the same thing.
yeah. As you were.
Okay. So basically, the trick that Nick used in Hero, and this is a quirk of all Semigraphics mode, including the Semigraphics 4, that standard set reset graphics on a CoCo 1 or 2 do right out of the box with Color Basic, not even extended. And that's the fact that the Semigraphics are basically a repeating pattern of 16 sets of 2x2 pixels. And then it goes in the order of the colors. So these are your character string codes from 128 through 255. The quirk is that black, pure black with none of the pixels lit up, repeats for all 8 colors, 16 apart. So if I do, well, I can show you on the screen here. So the top left corner of the screen is memory location. This is on standard, regular Semigraphics, or the standard text screen. 1024 is the upper left corner. So if I poke a 128, this is a black. This is basically we're doing green. So 128 through 143 is all of your green patterns. But the first of every single one of the colors, the first pattern is always black in all 4 positions. So you see a black thing there. And if I do the next one, you'll see the first green if I bump it up by 1. And then basically it just rotates through. And if I want to fill the entire thing back up with green, I do 143. So you kind of saw that up in the upper left corner. We replaced the
green
okay.
background. The green background might be a bit confusing.
No, I just wanted to show that, briefly. Now,
yeah.
if you go to the next one after that, the next color, which is yellow, that starts at 144. But you notice all pixels off is black again. So if I go on to the next one past that, 145, the first yellow pixel will show up.
Yeah.
And then if I want to go up through the entire range here and fill all 4 pixels up, oops, my math in my head went wrong. It should
Let's
actually
try 146.
What's that?
Try 146.
Oh, I better clear the screen again. Should be poke. Yeah, so there's the pure yellow. So basically it rotates through the pixels. But the thing is that all 8 colors, which is ranging from 120 to 255, all of them have a pure black. But if you peek the location on the screen, it actually differentiates. You have a green-based black, that'll be 128. You have a green-based yellow, that'll be 144. You have a green-based blue, that'll be 160, every 16. Now, that you can use as a trick if you want certain things to trigger differently, but make it appear the same on the screen, as long as you pick black as the color to do it. You actually have 8 shades, quote unquote, of black that actually are unique. And when you peek them off the screen, they will be unique. And I think, Nick, you use this, I think, when you're on the, when the lights are off screen, you can tell like a wall from a regular black, empty corridor background, because you got 2 different blacks you're doing there, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
So
and
that thing, okay, if you're familiar with the game Hero, right? You saw the graphics in the previous demo, and that was the lights are on, so you can see all the walls, the floor, and everything, as opposed to what's in the background, the black background. But there was an option whereby if you accidentally hit the lights, there's a light switch in the game on the screen and on some of the levels rather. And when you did that, everything would go black. So all those walls, whatever color they were, well, they're meant to be black, so you can't see it. And that, of course, blends in with the open space black. So that would make the lights out effect. But then how does the program keep track of when it finds a wall, where it's walking on a solid surface? I needed some way whereby the program could still see where the walls are, where the floor is, and using that technique that that Curtis described, they're all still there. They're just, you just can't see them because they're all being shown up as black, but they all do have their own unique value, which makes the program able to track where everything is. And
So you're just
that's
using the
basically
black
the
version
technique.
of each of the colors.
There
Yeah.
is for each of them, yes.
Mhm.
And that's again, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
You
so
can
here you see each line is divided into two chunks of 16. So this is going in color order. So green is the first 16, the upper left, then yellow right beside that. That's the next 16, then blue, then red, then buff/white, cyan, magenta, and orange. But you'll notice that the first strip for each of those colors is solid black because that's all the pixels off, but that's a green black, blue black below that, a white black below that, a magenta one below that, and on the right-hand column, halfway across the screen, you get the yellow black, the red black, the cyan black, and the orange black, which means if you do a peek of those memory locations, and this works on the higher semigraphics modes as well as on the regular SG4 we're seeing here, they will differentiate. They all appear in the screen as pure black. It's 8 unique colors as far as the CoCo is concerned, and as far as peaking is concerned. So you can actually make special blacks as like trigger points, or to do a lights off effect like Nick was talking about. And to try to make it a bit more visual, I wrote a little demo here. So it's blinking now where it's going to put the black for green. And now it's printed on the top, the character code that it gets back when you do a peek of that particular location. So now I'm going to do it again for yellow. And now with a flashing orange, that's where I'm peeking for the value. Now it's a 144. It's still black, but now it's the yellow black, quote unquote. And we do the next one here. Here's the blue one. So it's going to read where that flashing orange is. And it's 160. And basically you just keep adding 16 for all the different colors. Now, if you start using the vertical stripe ones, like a left half or right half, you will have to adjust the number to take into consideration that, but the rest of the black will still be unique to that color if you need a single specific pixel. There's the final one for orange. And that will be black 240. So basically you have 8 different blacks that you can use that you can differentiate from each other. And I actually did this in Semigraphics 12. This is actually running in Semigraphics. I drew these boxes. You're just using actual line BFs in the high-res mode. So if, not sure exactly. Like I said, I didn't differentiate my lines nice and clean like Nick did. You can see also line 25 there. I've got the Poke 179 CF0 PCLS. That's using the first trick that Nick showed. So actually I could change it to do a different background color if I wanted to. Let's pick
to see if you can
blue.
spread that out some.
So now I got a blue background PCLS. And if you remember how slow this drew using the line BF command before on episode 6 of CoCoTECH, using PCLS is a hell of a lot faster. But you see, I got that little black. Now because I've got it on a blue background, you can see the black that I've got under the green. And you'll be able to see the black here under the yellow. So this makes it a bit more obvious where I'm actually checking for that value and doing a peek. But visually, they're all black and they all look the same.
Yep.
So that way you can make up to 8 different trigger points of colors that you want to interpret the black as, and to be able to differentiate between them.
And in Hero, I combined these 2 techniques we just described. So what I did was the second screen I created also when the lights were to go off, I would recreate rather the current game screen. I would recreate it in that second area of the screen, but using those blacks, or those, in quotes, color blacks. And so I recreate the same screen, but it all looks black to the player. And then I would just copy it back onto the main screen. So that's where I'm using this technique with the blacks, as well as using the 2 screens to be able to work on one while displaying another one, and there's a bit of fiddling around to get things to happen cleanly, but it can all be done by combining all these techniques together. And that's what we generally call magic.
Now, one other technique, I don't have a demo here to actually show it, but using the fact that you can set up basic to think it's a PMODE 4, 6 pages, 192 pixels or 192 scan lines to print graphics on. You can actually have, if you do that to reserve the 4 and set up basic so it thinks it's doing the full 192 lines, and then you reset it to display the first 96 as a SG12 or a PMODE 1, you can actually have shapes of, like, say you're driving a spaceship, you can actually have it go right off the bottom of the viewable screen, and you're just using coordinates now higher than 96. You can actually have it scroll off, and then you can actually have stuff scroll back on smoothly. So if you want to, say, have a game where you've got spaceships coming up from the bottom, you can draw them on, the second half, coordinates 96 and above, and use get put even for that matter to draw the ships, and then have them actually come up onto the screen gradually from the bottom. And you can get that neat effect where, I think Galaga does that, where your ship, when you initially start the game, it comes up from below the bottom of the screen and comes up to where you're about to play. And you can use that technique in basic too. So you might start your coordinates at like 100 and then just, add -2 each time. So you're going to 98, 96, 94. Or now it's starting to show up in the bottom of the viewable screen, and then until the whole thing's on the screen. And then you can just change your game to do the left-right, movement of your ship. So you can do some pretty interesting effects with that. But it allows you to do some drawing a little bit faster, because you don't have to do a check. Are you running off the bottom of the screen? Maybe I have to use a special get bit buffer because I'm only drawing half a ship. You don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is just keep drawing until it's right off the screen and you're done. And then you can bring them back up again, which is a pretty nifty technique too. And you can also do partial screens. So you can actually tell it to offset to page 2 on a 2-page screen, where you're starting to display the second half of the screen that we're on right now, for example. And in the case of PMODE 4 and SG24, you have, your screen divided into 4 different pages. And if you P-clear 8, you can start moving the screen up and down a quarter of the screen at a time. So you can actually make a play field that's 2 screens tall if you wanted to, and just, go between them and draw stuff. So there's a lot of cool techniques, and a lot of these actually do work on regular graphic screens as well as the semi-graphic screens, but this will allow you to use some tricks that you can't do in the graphic screen, like this multiple shades of black as secret triggers. That does not work on a PMODE graphic screen. That's kind of unique to semi-graphics.
So yeah,
Anyway.
just to reiterate, all these techniques that we're showing is what can be done in basic and semi-graphics mode from basic. There's no machine code, it's all just basic. So it really does give basic a new lease of life as far as trying to create games or things in basic, because basic is usually too slow to do a lot of things, especially if they're graphical. And certainly if they're going to be using any of those semi-graphics modes, which are a bit higher resolution than your standard text 32 column by 16 line text display, the SD4 mode. All these techniques is just ways of fiddling with basic or modifying basic so that we can then make it do things that it normally couldn't do without it knowing. So, and that's
And here I'm running with the regular speed up poke for CoCo 1s and 2s. So actually the original demos you've been watching me do here have all been at the original 0.895 megahertz speed. Now I'm running at 1.78 ROM speed. So the blinking's faster, the drawing of the text characters at the top, which is actually a line BF with the same code for the individual digits from the digit array we did in the original demos.
And that flashing demo I had before, yeah, that was just running at the slow clock speed as well.
Yeah.
So
I probably shouldn't have put that sound in there on retrospect.
we're not hearing the sound.
Oh, good. Because it's kind of annoying. When it's printing the digits, it's actually doing a beep between every digit. I don't know why I did that. That was dumb.
Yeah, no, you're not sharing sound.
I did something right by accident. That's awesome.
I think they were the main topics we wanted to cover, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we covered most of the stuff about using Semigraphics and Basic on the first one. That was the big one. And of course, there's the slideshow and everything else. Nick and I will release an updated disk image once we recreate one or two of the demos that went kind of missing. And then I'll see if I can update the slideshow as well, because I think in there to PCLS the screen I'm mentioning, you should do a line BF and then a PCOP if you want to do it fast. I can replace all that with just this POK 179 to change the background color, then just use PCLS. Oh, one other trick with PCLS. If you do a SG24 screen, or even SG12 for that matter, if you do the PMODE 1,1, 1,2, or the 4,1, 2, 3, 4, etc., if you switch it back to PMODE 0, for example, and do a PCLS using the POK 179 trick, you can actually just clear the top half or the bottom half of an SG12 screen. So if you have a status part or a map part or controls for your spaceship versus the actual scene you're seeing, you don't have to clear the whole screen, redraw it all if some of it's going to stay the same. You might say leave a score and free men area if you're going to the next level and just clear the bottom half and then draw that part over again and cut the amount of drawing time down pretty drastically. And if you're using SG24, well, then it's divided into fourths, and you can clear the top quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, the fourth. You can still clear the top half and the bottom half if you do a PMODE 1,1 or 1,3 PCLS, or you can clear the whole thing at once with a PMODE 4 PCLS, or you can do the PMODE 0 PCLS to do the quarters. So you have a lot of options, and then that technique and trick still works on the regular graphic screens as well.
Yep.
Any questions from the panel and also from the chat any further before we wrap this up?
Asleep or dumbfounded?
I think bored
There's
might be more accurate.
There's actually 19 people on YouTube now, and yeah, not a word.
We're such
totally
great
amazed,
presenters,
guys.
Nick. They understood absolutely everything we said. They're going to crank out an SG24 game by next week.
And they're dumbfounded. Speechless.
I mean, I could follow along with this.
We're
I mean,
sorry.
I'm not a software guy, but I could follow what you guys are talking about.
And with the live demonstrations, know what's going on. Excellent.
Is that the ultimate test?
Mhm. So I'll have a new game out next week.
All right.
Is this one you can get past level 1 on?
You know, I probably wouldn't be able
Tic-tac-toe.
to do that either.
He can play as many times as he needs. Oh,
All right.
Coco Strangiato said, stellar presentation. I think we just got a thumbs up, 5 stars.
All right.
Nice.
Okay. Well,
It-
game
it's-
over.
Yeah, and back in the day, they didn't figure this out.
Not for Semigraphics, no. I've seen some of these techniques with like partially clearing screens and stuff done with the regular graphics screens, because some people did figure that out there, or the page flipping that was very often used by the more advanced basic programmers. But the Semigraphics, as far as I know, that wasn't done before we discovered it.
Scott Cooper says, I would have questions if I was awake. And Tom Eric Anderson said, could you add the disabled
Scott,
basic
honesty is
pokes?
not always the best policy. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Tom Eric Anderson said, could you disable the basic pokes for the dragon in the updated slides? Add the
I'll have to get
disabled-
60 to give me what the equivalent poke is. It should be exactly the same, because I think they're both extended basic, right? I just think some of the memory addresses in the lower RAM area that basic uses might be a bit different. 60 did know. I can't remember if he said it was different or it was the same off the top of my head.
Your Kieran.
We'll check that.
But all the pokes for setting up the Semigraphics modes and stuff, that's identical. There's no
All
change at all.
that's the same. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's just that
It's just the print hook that automatically every 60th of a second goes, what mode does basic think it should be in? Make sure that's what it is.
Well, actually, if you do that poke on a dragon or on a CoCo, if you do that poke and then do a, I don't know, a P mode 4, it should switch to P mode 4 and not switch back. That tells you that that poke is working.
It's working.
So do
Yeah.
the same thing on a dragon and it might work. I mean, it could be the same. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
want to say
if the Dragon and the bait and CoCo had the same disk formats, I would just flip over to Dragon emulation here in XROAR and just load it. But unfortunately, that's not the case. They're totally different. I can't load it then.
I mean, it's
I'd
not
have to
gonna do
save it in
anything.
ASCII and export it. And
It's not
It's
gonna do
all-
anything a good reset's not gonna fix.
yeah,
It'd be nice to undo what you do. So
yeah.
yeah.
And sometime in the future, when we start getting into OS9 Level 2 graphics and stuff here, which Wayne Campbell and I are planning on doing as part of the Basic 9, there's a bazillion other commands and techniques you can do there, but some of the things like double buffering, you can definitely do that. In fact, you can control up to 15 different screens at once if you want to, and that can be up to the full, 320 by 200 by 16 colors, so you can do all kinds of neat things there. So a little bit of a teaser. We'll be getting into that a little bit later, but this should give you guys that want, as Nick did back in the day, why does a quote unquote color computer only have 4 stinking colors you can use at once with any resolution worth its salt? Versus like really low res where you can get the 8 colors plus black. Well, now you can. Now you can get all 8 colors on a 192 line screen, which is the same res as PMODE 4 or PMODE 3 vertically. And if you have a CoCo 1 and 2, you can also mix text with it, which you can actually mix text characters together to get neat effects. In fact, for those of you in the Game On Challenge, if you notice that the font, if you've played it on one CoCo 1 or 2 emulator or on a real CoCo 1 or 2 or Dragon, you may have noticed that the text characters that the high score list and the help screen stuff does are not the same as what you normally see in a VDG. And what Karen is doing there is the same technique that Protectors 2 did by Synapse Software. And that's basically you change which character you're displaying by scanline in SG24. He might be using 12. No, he's using 24. And basically you're mixing like the top half of a letter H, or sorry, the top line of a letter H with the second line from a capital G mixed with the third line from a Q or something like that. And you can take the individual scan lines of the characters, kind of merge them together to make a new character set, kind of. Now you have some limitations there versus, say a CoCo VGA where you can literally reprogram it all. But you definitely can get some pretty fancy stuff. Like he's got a pretty neat looking bees and a few other things. If you guys haven't seen the game before, you can go check out the Game On Challenge channel on the CoCo Discord. People have already put up screenshots of their high scores, and you'll see some of those kind of custom design characters there using the same technique. Of course, those all required machine language. Now we don't even need that.
That's one of the things about programming in BASIC, or actually even any language, learning all these little techniques and tricks, and having basically a palette of different tricks, and then looking at that palette and then trying to work out how you can use them, combine them to get special things, special effects, or to achieve things in any of those languages that would normally not be possible, just by knowing all the little tricks and techniques.
Well,
And
as you program, you build up a library of
you build up, yeah.
of tricks like that.
All right. Well, I'm out.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all we've discovered since the last presentation. But big thank you once again to Retrorick, who figured out the Poke 179 for the background, so that PCLS, which is a much faster way to clear the screen, or half or a quarter of the screen, depending which res you're doing. That was one that I did not know, so that actually added to the toolbox. Because some of my demos actually were pretty slow redrawing, especially in SG24, because it would paint basically the top quarter and then p-copy it fast. Now it just does it bang. It's done in like half a second or something or less. So that definitely helps. So thank you to him for discovering that one. And the rest, I think, Nick, you discovered most of those, I think, on your own, just programming here and trying different things.
Yeah. There was the PCLS thing was something town. What was his name?
CoCoTECH?
CoCoTown?
CoCoTown.
Yeah.
He gave us that one, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice to actually see, like, besides Nick and myself, I mean, CoCoTown wrote entire demos, and he was doing the stuff that I said, might have unpredictable results, and he actually figured out how the prediction works, because he was doing, like, the fancy moire patterns and stuff like that using line in Semigraphics, which makes it look pretty cool. He did some pretty interesting stuff in there. There's a lot of potential here. I mean, there's quite a few Semigraphics 24 and 12 games on the Dragon, more than there was in the CoCo, because they didn't have artifact colors. So if you want to get colors in a fairly high res, that was pretty well the only way to do it, without sticking with pastel colors or the green, blue, yellow, red limited palette.
Yeah, and palette.
Yeah. So they kind of went the Semigraphics route for quite a few of their games to get all 8 colors, and we didn't explore it as much in North America. But the very first CoCo games in 81, 82, there's a few like Cave Hunter and Pack Attack and Protectors 2 and Guardian and a few others that did. But then it kind of fell by the wayside. One, because Tandy was not recommending them, because they were planning, if they ever did do an upgrade beyond the deluxe, the original CoCo 3 with the Motorola RMS board had a totally different graphics chip. And of course, the Gimme's a totally different graphics chip. Those limitations didn't exist, so they weren't, and they weren't really pushing people to use the Semigraphics ones because they would probably disappear on those newer chips. And they did. I mean, Semigraphics that we get working on a CoCo 3 now doesn't do any of the text characters, and it's also a bit of a cheat. You're more reprogramming the Gimme as to how high each pixel is, and kind of fooling it into simulating Semigraphics is what you're really kind of doing. So they used it a lot more in the Dragon, and there's some pretty good, like, you go through the Dragon archive and take a look at some of the games that they have that are in Semigraphics. Like there's that Cop to Snatch, which is kind of a scramble style game. That one looks pretty impressive, and there's a couple others. Trying to remember some of the other ones that were Two Frenzies that one the CoCo had originally, or Worm Tube, I think it was called. Worm Tube, sorry. Two Frenzies, totally different. But we've had a few of them, but most of them are in the very early. I think Storm, which is a Tempest clone by Computerware, another early one from 82. But around 83, people kind of just gave up on that mode in North America anyway. The Dragon kept using them for years afterwards and doing new games and actually getting a bit more fancy with them. I'd love to see what Erico could do with some of this, to be honest. So if somebody wants to team up with him to do the graphics drawings based on SG12 or 24, and then they write the code. I mean, the get put, if on an even byte boundary, can run quite quick. You can do some pretty fast animations with some pretty big sprites in Semigraphics 24 using that even byte boundary version of get put. So that's another trick that even Microsoft hadn't documented. Unless you went through the ROMs and disassembled it, you wouldn't even have known that was an option.
It's an advantage having a computer which is, well, old and slow. Because can you imagine if the computer was fast, like most young people nowadays, they wouldn't understand how to do this. Whereas, they expect the machine to be fast. They expect the machine to, do everything. Whereas here we are on a machine which doesn't have that speed or those capabilities, but we as CoCo enthusiasts, or it can be for any old computer, find ways to get around it or to use techniques that allow you to get more out of the machine that the designers never even anticipated.
Yep.
And that'll be my last philosophical comment for the show. Oh no, there is one more. Neutroid is great. No, okay.
Neutroid is Semigraphics. Now you got to do it in BASIC. That's the only way I'll accept Neutroid again.
Mind you, I reckon I could do some version of Neutroid in BASIC.
Yeah,
Now,
I think you wouldn't have all the digitized sound effects. That's one thing you would be missing. But yeah, you could.
There are some things that have to be done in machine code, I'm afraid.
Well, we should probably wrap this episode up because I saw even Henry's already yawning at this point. So.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
I'm
I'll
out.
hit this last button and then we'll hang it up.
All right.
All right. Well,